Motherhood is a logistics-heavy job, and there's no gradual ramp-up. That first baby is the shotgun that kicks off a logistical sprint. Suddenly we have to manage the details of diapers, feedings, sleep schedules, tummy time, laundry, oh the laundry, and all the other things that come along with the bundle. Then that bundle grows up a bit, and there's more micromanagement. You have to baby-proof your house from anything too sharp or too chokeable, man the stairs, teach them to walk and feed themselves, clean up the resulting messes, and do more laundry. Then they grow up even more, and you have to manage an ever-expanding family schedule. Plus, you're still cleaning, teaching, feeding, etc. And that's one big etc. Truly, we moms are up to our necks in details. But in this episode, we're going to ignore the neck down and focus on that beautiful head you have on your shoulders that rises above the details and thinks about the big picture, the strategic level of motherhood. This is what makes motherhood not just a job, but a career. This is the How She Moms podcast, where we talk about how different moms solve the same problems. I'm Whitney Archibald, a mother of 5 kids myself. I collect ideas so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. I had my epiphany about being a career mom when I was pregnant with my 3rd baby. I had 2 little boys, ages 3 and 1, and caring for them was my full-time gig. My house was a mess, and so was I. At that moment, I realized I chose motherhood as my career, but I'm treating this like a job, not like a career, and I'm floundering. Before kids, when I was working as a magazine editor, I was always thinking about strategy, the direction the magazine was going, our purpose, what we wanted to cover in future issues. But as a mom, I was living day by day in survival mode. Now, with the perspective of having been a mom for 13 years, I recognize that a large part of this crisis I was having was because of the stage I was in. When you have teeny kids, and especially when you're pregnant or have a new baby, survival is the strategy. In fact, it's why we get that nesting instinct right before we have a baby. We get the nursery ready and clean and organize the rest of our house like crazy people. We're prepping for a long period of sustained survival mode, just like a grasshopper who gathers food for the winter. But 2 1/4 kids in, I was craving a plan and a purpose to give the logistical drudgery some meaning. So I came up with a plan. I started a file called Archibald Inc. on my computer, and I divided my quote-unquote company into departments: culinary arts, education, recreation, housekeeping, finance, etc. Then I'd choose one department a month and create strategic objectives for that department, create a tactical system to support those objectives, and then make one achievable goal for that month. I started with the housekeeping department with the objective to put housekeeping on autopilot so I could spend my time on more important things. And I set the goal of just getting my dishes done every night before I went to bed. Each month I chose a different department and went to the library and found books I could read to learn about how to run that department better. I talked to friends and mentors about how they ran their households. 10 years later, I'm still following this general career development program, and it's totally changed my outlook on motherhood. Motherhood has become a true career for me. It also happens to be the basis for this whole podcast and blog. What I've discovered is that every mom is a career mom. Some moms have another career on top of their mom gig, but it doesn't diminish the fact that this is a long-term strategic career. It's a challenging career, but the perks put health plans and 401ks to shame. The first smiles and giggles, that indescribable feeling of having your baby fall asleep in your arms, and that newborn smell. Then there's the first joke they tell that is actually funny. The adorable dance recital, the late-night heart-to-hearts. It really is a rewarding career. In this episode, we're going to talk about several different moms and how they strategize in their own motherhood careers. Specifically, we'll talk about how they create deliberate family cultures, often complete with a family mission statement. We'll talk about how they set goals and how they include their families in their big picture planning. So I want to start by talking about having a deliberate family culture. Every family has its own culture, intentional or not. One way to evaluate just how intentional your culture is to think about what's really important to you as a family and then see if you're living according to those priorities and values. Once a year, in my family, we have a family culture meeting, usually around the time that school starts for the year. We usually start by talking about other families we know and what sets them apart. We know families who are service-oriented and are always helping others. We know sporty families and book-loving families, kind families and sarcastic families, minimalist families and always have the latest new toys families, cautious families and adventurous families, outdoorsy families and indoorsy families. We list characteristics of these other families, and we talk about how none of these are right or wrong ways to be, just different. Then we talk about how we would describe our family, what our core values are, and what we want our family to become in the future. These little annual check-ins are sometimes a wake-up call when we realize that we've let our culture slip into something that we really didn't want to be in the first place. It really helps us to get back on track and evaluate what we want to be known for as a family. Jen and her husband had one of these cultural wake-up calls after Christmas one year.
I looked at this mountain of paper and remnants and toys that had been kind of cast off, and some even already broken. And I thought, I can't do this. I can't feed into the commercialism and just have my kids be stuff. Everything we do is, what stuff can I get? What more can I get? So Jerry and I just had this little talk, and I said, we need to change our parenting paradigm. So I just said, we can't do this. I can't do another holiday season where it's all about what they're getting. And just, it was like they were opening presents, and they would open one and start to play with it and be excited. And we'd say, no, put that aside. Here's the other one. Here's your next present. And I just thought, that's dumb. What is that teaching them?
Yeah.
It's completely opposite everything that I was feeling inside. And so I just kind of thought, we need to get into service. And then we decided we want two overarching goals for our kids. We want to create global citizens and humanitarians.
Awesome.
So we very, very specifically said, okay, we are changing our focus to all of our gifts are going to be experience-based. And then I thought, I want them to get out of the mindset that everybody lives like they do. Because the first time I left the United States was my mission. And the first time I saw real poverty was when I was 20.
Yeah.
And I thought, what if I could do that for my kids now? What if I could get them out and realize not everybody has carpet, not everybody can drink water from a tap. These basic things. When you're begging for a phone, not everybody has electricity. So let's think about your blessings that you have. Yeah. So I started looking for the service trips, which I know are not effective overall, but I think they do have a place in the families. I wasn't kidding myself thinking we're going to go change the world on one of these trips, but it will sure expose my kids and help them to realize what real work is.
It wasn't easy to find the perfect opportunity that would allow kids to participate in humanitarian work. But while she was looking, a former mission companion called with the answer, a nutrition program in a tiny city where she and Jen had lived in Guatemala. At the time, Jen was getting her master's degree studying about home and community gardens. It was the perfect fit. Now the family goes to Guatemala together every year and a half or so, and Jen goes by herself once a year. Josie's family takes the value of being global citizens up another notch. Her family of 5 lives on a 40-foot sailboat together. Over the past 4 years, they've made their way from California to New Zealand, exploring as they go. I asked Josie how they decided to set sail in the first place.
Quality time together was a big part of choosing to leave to go sailing. Also learning through play. We've noticed, especially raising Taj, very active boy, that having the traditional here, sit down and learn this does not work. And we've met other families that went sailing with their kids, and just their overall ability to communicate with adults and a variety of age ranges, like, a 10-year-old can hang out with a 2-year-old, and a 10-year-old can hang out with a 18-year-old, and it all works out. We just really wanted that for our kids, just to be more accepting of everyone as a whole, a variety of age groups, a variety of cultures and personal beliefs, So there's that, and I think also just not being so caught up in pop culture and the the FOMO lifestyle, the fear of missing out, and um, just enjoying today.
Of course, another big part of their culture is togetherness, which you can hardly avoid when you're living together in such a small space, especially on the long passages.
Not everyone likes long passages, but we did a passage from Mexico to Costa Rica, which was 19 days out at sea. And then our other long passage was from the Galapagos to the Marquesas in French Polynesia, and that was 21 days.
Oh, wow.
And I feel like those times are one of my favorites just
Really?
because it's just day in and day out, and you're together, and the whole world is doing its thing, there's chaos and all this stuff happening, but we're together as a family on the boat, and it's like, okay, what are we gonna have for breakfast? And what are we gonna do for school today? And then lunch and dinner, and what's outside, and it's just very present, very day to day.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get that otherwise.
You can read more about Josie's adventures at howshemoms.com, or you can go to her website, afamilyafloat.com, and follow her on Instagram at afamilyafloat. So, reality check. Not everybody can travel the world with their families, but you don't have to travel the world to create a strong family culture. A big part of Kelly's family culture is cultivating curiosity. She encourages her kids to ask questions and then goes to the library with them to research those questions. They explore together, especially outdoors, and they plan educational outings as a family. Kelly tries to identify her children's strengths, and then she encourages them to do activities that develop those strengths. You can find a link to a profile about Kelly in the show notes. My great-grandmother, Laura McClure, made hospitality the hallmark of their family culture. The more the merrier, which is saying a lot since she already had 11 children of her own. They almost always had missionaries living with them, and the kids and missionaries mostly slept on cots in the living room, so it's not like she had a mansion to house them. And she was famous for her fried chicken. She always encouraged her kids to invite their friends to Sunday dinner, even though she had a lot of mouths to feed. My friend Tamsin's family has one of the most fun and unique family cultures of anyone I know. From an early age, she encouraged her kids to follow their passions, passionately. When someone showed an interest in medieval life, they bought costumes and hosted a medieval feast, turkey legs, dancing, and all. Probably not coincidentally, one daughter went on to get her master's degree in medieval history. When the family got into The Lord of the Rings, they really got into it. They read all the books and watched all the movies, of course, in full costume. But then they went the next step and watched all the other movies starring the actors in the Lord of the Rings movies. They dedicated a whole wall in their basement to pictures from the movies, and then they took a trip to New Zealand to hike where it was filmed. Many families take defining their values one step further, and they actually write out a family mission statement, motto, creed, or value statement, whatever they want to call it. These range from simple one-sentence mottos or creeds to page-long family mission statements. As always, the personality of your family can determine what works for you. For example, Andrea's family has one of the simplest mottos I've ever seen, and it happened by accident. Her daughter loves to draw, so one day she lettered the words, "I am a Davis," decorated it with flowers, and showed it to her mom.
I was like, oh, I love that. And it was really pretty. She does this awesome hand lettering and has some cool like floral designs around it. And it's just, I'm a Davis. And so we kind of picked that up. In fact, she's working on a bigger version of it to put in our entryway. It's not done yet, but we talk a lot about that when we say, I'm a Davis, and what does that mean? And so we've never sat down and written it out, but we'll talk about it. I'm like, when the kids say, oh, that's too hard for me, and I'm like, no, it's not too hard for you because you're a Davis, and you can do hard things, and even it doesn't have to be perfect. Like just you just have to do your best. And so I think just when those tricky things come up, even in my own mind where I'm like, I can't do this, or this is hard, I think, no, I'm a Davis. What does being a Davis mean? It means I'm going to give my best.
At the beginning of each school year, Elizabeth throws a back-to-school feast to celebrate both the new school year and their family. At the feast, Elizabeth and her husband reveal their family theme for the year. This year's theme is, "There is sunshine in my soul." They also have a family motto that doesn't change year over year, and that is, "Work hard, finish strong," which they repeat often. It applies to so many situations. Sydney is in a much different stage of her life. After decades of raising 6 children full-time, all the kids moved out and she wasn't crazy busy anymore. In fact, she realized that no one would even know whether she got out of bed each morning. It was time to redefine her strategy. So she adopted the motto "Peace, Passion, Purpose" as her personal motto. And she decided that humanitarian work would be the best way to fulfill this new strategy. She set about finding just the right charitable organization she could volunteer with. She discovered the organization Gathering Humanity, where she now helps relocate refugees and gives them a fresh start. She especially loves involving her grandchildren with this work. My family created a collection of family mottos based on a format we learned from Marilee Boyack, author of Parenting Breakthrough, one of my favorite parenting books. Her mottos included "Boyacks are early" and "Boyacks don't bail." We revisit our mottos once a year, so they change a little bit, but our current list includes "Archibalds try new things," "Archibalds have faith, not fear," "Archibalds are kind," "Archibalds are adventurous," "Archibalds pray," and "Archibalds have each other's backs." Clearly, many of these mottos are more aspirational than descriptive, but we're working on it. Last year, Christy sat down with her family to create their family mission statement. They talked about what mission statements are and then had a big brainstorming session where they wrote down everyone's ideas, even when the 3-year-old was being silly. They worked together to fine-tune it into something they were all excited about. She made treats so they'd all be motivated to put in the work. They ended up with a beautiful statement that gives them purpose and unity. It says, "The Kerr family desires to be active and willing to act and make our home a safe haven where the Spirit can dwell. Eternal life is our goal." Christy then created a beautiful print of their mission statement that they hang on their wall. Jody opted for a more visual representation. She and her family created vision boards. They talked about what they wanted their family to look like in the future, and then they looked through magazines to find pictures that represented what they wanted to be. They have this vision board hanging outside the kids' bathroom so that they can see it every day. So far, we've been talking a lot about ideas and values, kind of the philosophical side of family strategy. But now we're going to bring it to a more practical level. Once you know what you want your family culture and mission to be, it's time to make sure your goals, priorities, and actions align with those values. To make sure her family strategy is on track, Andrea asks an important question.
Does our calendar and our budget reflect what is most important to us?
And
So
then
like
how do you evaluate that? Is that you and your husband?
Yeah,
Usually?
mostly, yeah, but then as our kids have gotten older, they play a much bigger part in that. So like our oldest didn't want to take piano lessons anymore, and it was, we have 5 kids, and so 4 of them were in piano all at one time, and it was getting really expensive. And I just noticed that when she had free time, she didn't sit down at the piano, whereas a few of my other kids did. And she's at the point where she can read music really well, and she can play in a pinch if she needs to.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just had to decide that our calendar isn't reflecting what really matters to her. It might have still mattered to me, but, she was getting old enough to where she wanted to help make those decisions. And so she did. She quit piano, but she does, she loves dance. And so she continues with that, and she loves art. And those are things that she spends most of her free time doing.
On a bigger scale, Andrea's family decided to relocate from the Midwest to Oregon a few years ago, even though that meant downsizing to a significantly smaller house and a tighter budget, because they wanted to move closer to mountains and get outside more. Another interesting thing they do to prioritize their time is something I've never really heard of another family doing. They actually use their TV like an appliance. It lives in a cupboard until they decide they want to watch something. Then they take it out, watch it, and put it back away when they're done. Andrea has created a whole business around families and screen time at betterscreentime.com. At the beginning of each year, Jillian and her family evaluate all their activities, the ones they're already doing and the ones they'd like to do that year. Then they make their annual quit list, the things they're willing to give up so they can fit in the new things that they want to do, or just getting rid of the things that aren't paying off anymore. They try and evaluate the motivation behind doing things like dance lessons or soccer so they can decide if it makes sense to add them to their schedule or not. For example, their son wanted to join Boy Scouts so we could go camping and hiking and other outdoorsy stuff. But the family already does that on a regular basis, and they even had a huge camping trip to 10 different national parks already planned for that year. So Boy Scouts was relegated to the quit list. You can hear more of Jillian's wisdom on episode 47, Doing Less to Have More, on the Family Looking Up podcast. It was so good, I listened to it 3 times. Jillian's own website is montanamoneyadventures.com. Prioritizing always involves sacrifice of one thing or another. Sometimes, gasp, that means cleaning the house takes a back seat to building relationships. Here are Jody Chaffee's thoughts on this. She's the host of the podcast Our Modern Heritage.
Because I'm trying to work on personal development and my children and time that I spend with them, sometimes I let tasks go undone just because they're not the priority. And so that's become part of our culture is is that prioritizing the relationships, but then also making a time when accomplishing those mundane things is important. So the way that our day is structured is that, I spend most of the day homeschooling and doing personal tasks, but then we have an hour in the morning where we get like the jobs done that we should do, like empty the dishwasher and switch the laundry, things like that. And then we have an hour just before dinner where we say, okay, now we need to restore balance so that we can function. Because I don't like messes, I don't like all those mundane things, then I have to set aside a time that they still get done so that we can focus on our relationships. It doesn't, just because I say I don't focus on it doesn't mean that we never do it because I feel like it needs to be done or else those things become a distraction. We don't want our stuff to become a priority.
Yeah.
With 4 kids running around all day, and I tell you, like right now, there are Legos all over my living room. and so it's like, and I'm like, you know what? They're just being kids. And if I, stifle that, then they would be preoccupied and worried about, oh no, mom's going to be uptight and upset because my Legos are over the house. And then they won't have any fun, or they won't learn, or they won't be able to have that freedom to explore themselves. But then when I say, okay, it's time to restore balance, then we know, okay, it's time to collect those things and put them away until tomorrow.
Another big part of creating a family strategy is setting goals together. I first heard about the Chung family's plan with a capital P at their company's annual Christmas party over dinner. Intrigued by this idea, I immediately scheduled a time to talk with Liesl about the plan and how it all started.
It started because given I work in business and do business plans, I said we should have a plan for our life because businesses have plans and then they reflect on how things went. So we should do this. And so then he went along with it. Now he's really glad that we do this. And we have different sections of this plan. So we have, what do we want to do by the end of this year, by the end of 5 years, by the end of 10 years, and then the 30-year goal. And when we do this, we always start with the 30-year goal. And we say, all right, what do we want at 30 years? And then from there, how do we backtrack? Because I think a lot of people have a vision of where they want to be over a certain period of time, and then they live their life. But if you're not intentionally staying on a specific path to hit that vision, it's just really easy to kind of drive in whatever direction life takes you. And then you find that you end up in Kansas instead of in Boston. And so we created different parts of the plan. So the first section is the personal. So Ben has a set of personal goals. I have a set of personal goals. Then we have a section around what do we want our marriage to look like in 30 years? What do we want our family to look like in 30 years? Then kind of the area beyond our immediate family, extended family, friends, our community. What do we want our professional life to look like? And so we just kind of map out the whole plan. And we do this once a year. So at the end of or beginning of every year, we sit down, we pull last year's plan and we say, all right, what have we done? And we kind of highlight everything we've done. And then we say, all right, what does this coming year look like? And what we find over time is that 30-year picture never changes, but the 1 year and the 5 year picture changes quite a bit as our family continues to evolve.
Andrea would have been all over the Chung family goal-setting sessions, but it would have been a little too intense for her husband. That's a balance she's had to learn to negotiate.
So when my husband and I first got married, I'm very kind of, I don't know if you want to say type A, but just goal-oriented. And I was like, hey, let's set goals for our marriage. Like, let's set, like, lifetime goals. And my husband just looked at me like, what? And here he was, like, he was almost done with his master's degree in mechanical engineering. All of his schooling had been paid for. And, he's brilliant. And so in my mind, I just thought he was like me, because obviously he had learned to, like, achieve things, right? Like, he was had achieved a lot of things in his life, but he wasn't the kind of person that loves to sit down and map out all their goals. And what I've learned to call those kind of people are reluctant goal setters. And so I learned that I had to take it, just approach it a little bit differently. And so I backed off quite a bit because I didn't want to impose, I guess, my way of setting goals on him. So I realized that just having conversations about it worked a lot better than maybe a really formal sit down.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, as time has passed, we've definitely, like, come to each other's levels a little bit more. So I've toned down and he's stepped up, I would say.
Another seemingly simple approach to goal setting, which is becoming more and more popular, is to come up with a one-word theme for the year. I say seemingly simple because I tried it this year, and it was actually surprisingly hard to come up with one word that I wanted to focus on. Surprisingly hard, but also surprisingly rewarding. It was pretty fun to try and come up with the right word. Or words, actually. I chose look up with the triple meaning of being positive, looking heavenward, and looking up from our phones. Sarah has been doing this for about 8 years. She realized that her lists of goals ended up being the same each year, so obviously something wasn't working. So she started picking a theme for the year instead, something to help her focus and really change. These themes are usually just 1 or 2 words, such as nurture, uplift, or pray. She says, usually by the end of the year, I have internalized my theme and it's part of me. I really have changed, I really have made progress, and that feels awesome. The other awesome thing about what she does is that she's an artist too, and so she paints a beautiful piece of art around the word. I actually ordered one of hers this year, and I love it. I'll link to her site in my show notes as well. This year, one of Jessica's goals was to be more intentional with family time, the time she spends with her children and her husband to reconnect, teach, and learn from one another. As a family, they sat down and came up with a list of 12 things they would like to do together in 2019. They all had to agree on each item, but they also had to remember that there should be a certain balance of service and self on their list. She also reminded the kids that not everything they do has to be extravagant or cost a lot of money. Having an outdoor play day or a barbecue in the backyard can be just as important and valuable as going on an exotic vacation. So they got out their calendar and penciled in 1 activity per month, such as a day playing in the snow, a day at a museum, or a neighborhood cleanup. You can see their entire list on her profile at howshemoms.com. One of the best goal-setting activities my family has ever done was an idea we got from Tracy Eister in episode 60 of the Family Looking Up podcast. She suggested getting a long roll of butcher paper and making a grid with your family members down one side and the next 15 years along the top. Then you fill in significant events in everyone's lives, such as moving to middle school, getting a driver's license, and graduating from high school. Talk about a wake-up call. It was so interesting to see how our lives lined up and how quickly some of these activities will be coming up. The next step was to put some of our bucket list items on the timeline, such as vacations we wanted to take together and accomplishments we hope to achieve. Really, the whole activity was just mind-blowing. So I could talk about family strategy all day, but because none of us have that kind of time, I want to talk about one last thing. When we're thinking about strategy, we can't forget to enlist the help of others, especially mothers who have already passed through the stage we're in, and even mothers in earlier stages who can help us rekindle that first-time mom enthusiasm and adoration for our children. When I was working as an editor, I always looked forward to our meetings with our editorial advisory board. They were so passionate about their careers and had such good advice for one another. So when I became a mom, I was quick to assemble an unofficial advisory board of my own. Moms that were deliberate and passionate, mentors from all different stages of motherhood. When I make plans for play dates or lunch with other moms, I often tell my husband that I'm going to a board meeting. I usually even go with a plan about what topics I want to bring up and what questions I want to ask. Getting support and advice from other moms is one of my best motherhood strategies and really the reason I started How She Moms in the first place. If any of the moms featured on this episode intrigued you, you're in luck. I've profiled many of them on howshemoms.com, and I include links to each of them in the show notes, as well as any other podcasts and blogs I've mentioned in this episode. I hope they inspire you, as they have me, to try some new strategies and to rethink your existing strategies, family culture, and value. Thank you for listening to the How She Moms podcast. I'd love to find out how you mom. There are 4 main ways to add your voice to this How She Moms community. First, you can email me at whitney@howshemoms.com, or you can go to my contribute page at howshemoms.com and find out what topics I'm currently researching. There will be questionnaires that you can fill out there. You can also follow me on Instagram to see daily tips about how different moms approach the current topic. Finally, you can sign up to receive email questionnaires for each new topic so you can contribute your ideas. Special thanks to my mom for playing my theme music. She's been playing this song since I was a little girl, and to me, it's part of the soundtrack of motherhood.